Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of In-Depth Angling. Today we're going to be doing an in-depth breakdown on the pre-spawn phase for blue, channel, and flathead catfish on Lake of the Ozarks, located in central Missouri. We're going to cover over the locations to look for, patterns the catfish get on in pre-spawn phases, and some tips on catching them out on the water this spring. And if you're new to the channel, do yourself a favor and subscribe so you don't miss new videos and tips to help you catch more fish this year out on the water. Let's get right into this thing. Lake of the Ozarks has 3 species of catfish living in its waters: flathead catfish, blue catfish, and channel catfish. Flathead being the biggest of the 3, blue cats on a close second behind them. Those fish can both get over into around 100 pounds at their maximum growing potential. And then channel catfish, which are abundant in numbers in the lake, but don't have an overall size capacity as the other 2 species do, get to be around 30 to 40 pounds at their maximum growing potential. The pre-spawn cycle starts once water temperatures start to warm and the days become longer in the spring. The water temperature to look for is in the 48 to 60 degree range, and that usually happens in early to mid-spring. Once water temperatures reach those levels, catfish will start leaving their winter haunts in search of more food as their metabolism starts to rise as the water temperature gets warmer. A couple examples of some wintering holes out here on Lake of the Ozarks would be down here. This is in mid-lake area. Just some really steep areas and kind of deeper holes out in the middle of the main channel where the old river is set up at. So right here in this white, you can see that that's the old river channel. And there's some different humps and stuff out here. These are good wintering holes, especially during the warmer days and stuff in the winter time. They'll get up on top of some of these different humps and flats out here, like this one here, just off the edge of this, and on the colder days they'll sink back down into the middle of the old river channels and stuff. Blues are more active in the winter. They kind of take the winter and the cold the best of the 3 species. Channel catfish, they usually kind of hang out on the edges or maybe just barely up here on this flat during those warmer days during the winter time. And then flatheads usually don't really move too much. A lot of times you'll catch them, if you do get one in the winter time or in the colder months, they usually have mud on their belly when you catch them, or they have like some mud on their back. Even they almost like lay down in the sediment to try to stay warmer and almost burrow down for the time being. I want to show you guys an area over here on the Navionics as well. Another little example of like a wintering area, what I'm talking about, where these fish are going to be leaving during the pre-spawn phase. Another deeper hole out here. This little dotted line is going to be kind of hard to see, but I'm going to outline it here with these 2. It's the old river channel, kind of runs right along through here. It comes in close to this bank, which is more of a bluff end, and there's some steeper embankment right there. This is a deeper hole that's out here in the channel. It gets down to 35 feet, and the rest of it is in the 30s and stuff. So especially on those colder days in the wintertime, those are where those fish are really going to be sitting at. There's a flat adjacent to it over here. It's got a slow, kind of gradual taper going up, as you can kind of see. The lines aren't super close together, but it does gradually get shallower as we go up. And those are going to be key areas that those fish are actually going to be moving to during the pre-spawn phase in search of more food. The catfish that are sitting in these wintering holes will move up to shallow water gradually throughout the spring. The key is paying attention to the water temperature as you're fishing in. Areas that receive more sunlight and southern winds will heat up first. So in this area here is faced up here towards the north in this cove, and it's a channel right off the end of this bluff here. This would be a good area where I would be expecting some of those fish to kind of slide up into in search of some food, as well as over here in this one. It's really close to this hole as well. Those are good key areas to be looking for, coves right next to wintering holes. If you know of a wintering hole, or you want to know a couple other ones, you can check out that video that I've made previously for winter catfish on Lake of the Ozarks, linked up above, and it'll also be at the end of the video if you guys want to watch that. They'll kind of set up a little bit more shallow, suspend up along some of these bluff ends over here in search of food if that's where the shad still are, and kind of move in even on these secondary points that are nearby. Lake of the Ozarks is such a big body of water that spreads out. It won't all be the same temperature throughout the entire thing, and because of this, some areas of the lake will have catfish well into the pre-spawn, and other areas will still have fish in the winter pattern. Key areas to kind of look for the pre-spawn phases to start up first are going to be up here on these upper river arms. This is an area that's going to get a lot of runoff coming in here through this creek, coming on the back end of this. So any kind of warm rain that we get will heat that water up faster, in conjunction with having the shallower water overall. So you can see there's a lot more darker blue, indicating it's a shallower channel. Out here in the middle, it's in 15 feet deep for some of these holes, and those areas will still hold catfish during the wintertime. A lot of those fish will still remain in those upper arms, and they tend to heat up a lot faster than what the lower end of the lake has, because in the lower end of the lake, I'll go down there real quick just so you guys can see. We're looking at 115 feet out here where the old river channel is. That takes a lot longer to heat up this water over here just because it's a lot wider of a channel in relative size from shore to shore across the lake from each other, and in depth overall. You're looking over at 80 feet deep throughout the main channel. It's pretty common in this lower end here by the dam. So this will be the area where those fish are going to be in a wintering mode the longest, down here towards the lower end. And then the upper ends of the lake, like either you go up here towards the Graveway arm of the lake, or you go up to Grand Glaze on this southeast corner, or you're going up towards the southern end of the lake on the Niangua or Little Niangua. Those are the kind of areas that are going to be going first because they have that runoff that's coming in from warmer rains, and it's shallower and it heats up and changes temperature faster than the deeper water does down there near the dam. Warm rain can speed things up as well, so keep an eye on the sky and fish areas where runoff comes in. That'll change the temperature of the water just a few degrees, triggering those fish to move up out of the wintering holes and move up shallower. So an example of this would be like Lynn Creek over here, also has another feeder creek that comes into it, and it also produces a lot of runoff after rain happens, and that water in the back of this cove here will get a lot warmer, and so this cove heats up a little bit quicker in the back third than it will out here towards the main channel, where it's significantly deeper and there's a little bit less runoff impact where it's over in 80 feet of water. But the downside of that is, just as warm rains and warm days can heat the water, sparking a hot preseason bite for catfish, a cold front with a cold rain can shut things down in a hurry. When this happens, fish go back to the deep break just off the areas that they are in during those warm days. If they were moved up here into the back of this cove, this little cove here, and there's an old creek that comes in the back of this pocket here, they're going to move further out and back into this channel here where there's an old creek bed. And same kind of thing will happen whether you're over here in the mid-lake section or if you're up here on the Niangua. For example, like there's a flat that sits right here off of this section. If there is a big cold front that moves in and those fish are starting to push off, they're going to push right back down into this channel here because it's close. They're not going to move out and move miles and miles away to where it's back to 30 or 40 feet deep. So like I just showed you guys, this flat area over here where it's blue, and this area here and these sections over here are all good areas for pre-spawn locations to look for. I'm looking for those deep to mid-depth flats off the main channel and those upper ends of the lake, main lake points and secondary points in the bigger coves towards the mid and lower ends of the lake are good locations, and areas with rocky shoreline and riprap banks that are close to old creek channels. So I'll give you guys an example of that real quick as well, where the old creek channel in a cove like Lynn Creek here comes in close to the bank and there's some rock there or something. So you can see this old creek bed outlined here in the dotted line. I'll tap it here so you guys can see that a little bit better, but those are both ends of it. And it comes in closer over here towards this bank along here, and there's a little bit of a pocket and a steeper bank. It's not quite a cliff, but it is a steeper sided bank on the side over here. Those are going to be areas that are going to have bigger rock in them, and it's also going to have a lot of different crayfish living in it, bluegill living in it, shad will go up to feed on it. There's a lot of food up there, and those are quick areas that those fish will like to move up and down this creek bed like it's a highway as they're coming back in here to do their pre-spawn thing, and then move up here to feed when they get active. Baits to use for all three species can vary greatly in certain times of the year, but this is not one of those times. In general, it's pretty basic in what you guys should be using for bait. The lake has a high population of shad, and during the cold winter months and early spring, shad are killed off due to the cold, creating what we refer to as shad kills on the lake. Channel catfish will eat the dead shad in the shallows or on the bottom, even if it has been there for some time, as they are true scavengers by nature. Cut shad and shad guts are their natural food source this time of year. However, being the scavengers they are, the channel cats will eat basically any traditional stink bait, chicken liver, and whatever else they can find on the bottom after being in a very hard cold winter, and their metabolism is coming up, so they are willing to eat just about anything. What's naturally abundant for them is shad though, so you cannot go wrong with using cut shad or shad guts. Those are two of my favorite baits to be using during the early spring season for the pre-spawn fish. The shad guts and cut shad works well for the blue catfish as well, but they're a little more picky and selective on what they will eat. Unlike channel catfish, fresher shad or live shad generally works best for targeting blue catfish on the lake. Those channel catfish will eat live shad as well. Blue catfish prefer it a little bit better, and they'll still eat some of the dead stuff, so don't be afraid to try that out. But they tend to eat a little bit more of a fresher bait. It won't be something that's laying on the bottom of the lake for 2 weeks in general. I mean, they usually will take something if it's there for a few days or so. Flathead catfish are the most lethargic of the 3 species of catfish in the lake, and the most picky by far and selective on their prey. Flatheads very rarely take dead bait unless it is fresh, and mostly feed on live bait such as shad, bluegill, and other fish small enough to get their big mouth around. So they really don't take a whole lot of dead bait or anything that's been laying on the bottom. They're only going to be taking off fresh cut bait if it's dead or it's going to be live for them to eat it. You're going to have your best success with using either live shad or bluegill. Flatheads are almost dormant in the wintertime and are the last to venture out of their haunts, and once they do, they start feeding heavily as temperatures warm up. The flatheads tend to relate to more wood and rock than soft bottom this time of year. They're a little bit more cover oriented than the other 2 species of catfish in open water. They can be in the open water at times and you can catch them there, but most of the time they're going to be at least in an area where there's some timber or some bigger rocks. You can expect to find all 3 species of catfish found in the lake to be in a state of flux throughout this pre-spawn cycle. Not all the fish go up to move out of winter patterns at the same time. There'll be some fish in wintering holes on the lake and some already feeding and finding spawning territories in the lake at the same time in the same body of water. To ensure that the species is still going to have a spawn that year, and in case of a catastrophic event that wipes them all out, they don't all go up at the same time to spawn, they don't go all up at the same time to leave the wintering holes, and they kind of do this in stages where some of the fish will be there and they kind of come in waves, and you'll see that if you're out fishing fairly regularly for these fish, you might catch a good handful of them in a certain spot. And then there'll be some fish that are still out deep that were already coming up shallow, going back out. It's a whole cycle throughout the spring, and it's a moving target as it always is. Locating active fish in a positive feeding mood is key to having success out on the water. You can achieve this by continuing to move and cover water in search of active fish. Once you catch a fish, take note of what type of bottom and depth you have. If you have a fish finder, that's really handy for you to kind of tell what kind of bottom you have. The color of the bottom on your graph will kind of tell you what the bottom content is, if it's silt or if it's rock. That'll help you greatly in figuring out what kind of structure those fish are relating to. And also the location that you caught the fish. And continue to match those factors up when deciding where to fish at your next spot. An example of breaking down a lake in sections, I like to break it down to where, let's say I take this big long cove here and I break it down and say the back third right here, and if I'm catching fish in the back third of this cove here, then that's where I'm going to be starting to fish in other coves as well. I'm going to fish the back thirds. If I'm catching them out here in the middle of the cove and the second third of the cove, then that's where I'm going to start targeting, and I'm going to kind of take note of where the depth is. So if I'm catching them in 20 feet of water close to these breaks over here, I'm going to be targeting that in the next cove over here as well in the middle of the cove. And then the other side of it is the first third. So if I'm out over here and I'm catching them off these points still, I know to not really be paying attention and going all the way to the back third and not mess with it. I'm just going to continue to find those fish out here in these deeper sections and where they're closer to the main channel. And that's really how you pattern fish, whether you're going for catfish, bass, crappie, whatever you're trying to target. Always try to break down the lake into sections and try to categorize everything up. Then find other areas that match that same description, and you should be able to find fish from spot to spot as you move. That's going to do it for us today. I hope you guys learned something from this video. Leave me a thumbs up below this video, and I'll do more of them like it in the future to help you guys become better anglers out on the water. Thank you for watching. Tight lines out there, and we'll catch you on the next one.